Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for joining me and for making this part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. I hope you've had a good week. You've made it to Friday. Amazing stuff. It feels good to be at the weekend. Yes, I maintain that Friday is the start of the weekend. I know that some people may, and me included, work on Fridays. But just that knowledge that Saturday and Sunday is next makes it all the sweeter. Plus, there's sometimes Premier League football, of course, on on these days as well. We're going to be talking about which games are going on in the Premier League very, very soon, of course, as well, because it is the weekend. But before we do that, let's jump into the chat box and have a quick chat with you guys as well. Stephen, good morning to you, to Steve, to Martin, to Olu, to Rich, good morning to Black Shine, to Rich, to A1, to Jacob, Morgie, Jose, Stevie, Derek, good morning to Jimbo and Jose and NSW, Marcus, Lyndon, Mr. Ree, Grantley Poos, Tom, PJ, Glenn, and plenty more of you guys joining us as well. Thank you, everybody, for doing so. It means the absolute world that you do. If you could drop a like, subscribe, all of that usual stuff. I had a little email this morning saying that there's been 2,000 uploads now on the channel, which is kind of crazy. It's been going since 2015. I've been doing it since 2016. And yeah, it's been an incredible honor and pleasure to join you throughout this journey. And 2,000 uploads later, 2001, this one being, we're still going strong. 350 of these Arsenal news shows. I think we've done over 300 of the transfer shows. So it's nearly 2 years worth of daily shows. And we only missed really one the other day because of illness, and the rest have been missed because of obviously things like press conferences or work, etc. But yeah, amazing stuff. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And Lewis, happy birthday to you. And I hope that the hangover from your birthday is going fine, mate. And yes, thank you for the kind support always on the channel. Speaking of hitting milestones, I'm hoping to bring you some exciting news of a live event next year to talk about as well. But we have plenty of time to make sure that you've got that day off and to get your tickets. I'm expecting this one to go pretty quick. So we're going to have some amazing guests. We're going to be discussing some great topics, I'm sure, when the event comes around as well. But I'll keep you updated about a potential live event next year that you can set aside time for. There are some things that need to fall into place. But yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing you information about that in the coming weeks. So I look forward to it. Right. We should probably get on with today's show. Let's kick off with yesterday's Thursday games. Brighton drew 2-2 away at Marseille in what was probably be a bit of a reprieve. They'll probably be quite happy with that result after the disappointment against AEK Athens on the opening day. West Ham beat Freiburg away from home in an impressive 2-1 victory. Meanwhile, Liverpool beat Union Saint-Gilloise 2-0 at Anfield in the Europa League fixtures. Aston Villa winning against a Bosnian side who I'd personally never heard of before. Zvinjti. It was a very, very different team. I've never ever come across them, and they did really, really well actually to hold Aston Villa for the majority of that game. McGinn right at the end, I managed to catch the end of the game. Yeah, McGinn went mad after scoring that goal after very, very, very late efforts in the Europa Conference League. Premier League action this weekend. Luton play Spurs on Saturday at 12:30. Burnley play Chelsea. Everton play Bournemouth. Fulham play Sheffield United. Manchester United play Brentford. They're all 3:00 kickoffs. And Crystal Palace play Nottingham Forest in the late kickoff. On Sunday, Brighton Hove Albion host Liverpool. Very exciting to see Alexis McAllister return to the Amex. West Ham United play Newcastle in a very interesting game as well at 2:00. Another 2:00 game between Wolves and Aston Villa. And then, of course, the headline act of the weekend, Arsenal against City at 4:30. So that's all of the action that's coming up over the course of this weekend. But to talk through some of the Arsenal stories, Jonas Eidevall has signed a brand new contract as Arsenal manager. Really interesting decision by the club to do this now, because there is a lot of pressure on Jonas after the disappointment of missing out on Champions League football during the period in which we lost to FC Paris, and we're now in a situation where there won't be any European football for Arsenal this season because there's no kind of Europa League equivalent in the women's game. But what we do have is obviously the Premier League, which started off again quite poorly with an opening defeat to Liverpool. And then there's the Conti Cup, and we've got other cup competitions as well, the Women's FA Cup as well. And hopefully we can find some reprieve this season. But I'd say that Jonas Eidevall was under a bit of pressure, and now he signed a brand new contract. So very interesting indeed that has been announced, and specifically at this point in time as well. So let's wait and see how the season unfolds and whether or not that decision will be justified. Speaking of contracts, Myles Lewis-Skelly has signed his first professional contract with the club. Really fantastic news. Arsenal's most exciting young players, and he has indeed signed a brand new contract with the team. So really positive news on that front. Hopefully he continues on the pathway that he has been and develops further and gets some opportunities in the first team as well. It'd be fantastic to see him get some of those chances because he is very talented. He continues to impress. He's injured at the moment. Hopefully he'll be returning to action very, very soon. But congratulations to Myles on that achievement. Now, we need to talk about the England national team. And I know a fair few of you may have tuned in to see my reaction to this. Before we go on to the Saka chaos, Ramsdale, Saka, Rice, and Nketiah have all been called up. Very happy for Nketiah because I was really frustrated with his treatment in the last England squad. He certainly deserved the call up then. And I felt as though with the return of Gabriel Jesus that he may not have got the opportunity again to be called up to the squad. We have a friendly against Australia on Friday. If he is not involved in that game, I'll be very disappointed for him. Stop calling the guy up and then not using him. It's ridiculous that he wasn't used. I think it had a negative impact on him, to be honest. I think it would have really hit his confidence in some ways to be called up and then to not be used. I think Nketiah, again, that call up is a good thing for him. But no Ben White again in the squad. It's obvious. We all know that it's not for footballing reasons, because if it was for footballing reasons, it'd be beyond ridiculous to not select him. To choose Harry Maguire over Ben White is just kind of mad. Absolutely crazy that Ben White is not there. It's not for footballing reasons. It cannot be for footballing reasons. There's just no way, shape, or form it can be for footballing reasons. I think it's one of those situations where we have to hope that Gareth Southgate loses his job before Ben White gets another opportunity with the squad, because under this coach, under this coaching staff, it's seemingly not going to happen for him. So let's keep fingers crossed that Benjamin White can get a call up very soon. Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka was indeed called up to the squad. Now, we need to start this off with a caveat. And the caveat is that suggestions are, and Sammy Mokbel reported yesterday for the Mail that a decision is still kind of yet to be made in some ways on Saka's inclusion. Saka could indeed still pull out of the squad based upon how kind of the build-up to this weekend and the use of Saka this weekend happens. There's suggestions and certainly whispers flying about that Arsenal do not want Saka to be part of this squad, that they do not want him to be in this group, and that they would prefer if he was given the opportunity of a rest, which is, without a doubt, the right decision. To call Saka up for a friendly against Australia, for a game against Italy where we have plenty of depth, plenty of options. Jarrod Bowen's been called up to this squad, as you saw on the previous side, who can play in that right wing slot if you need him to. Phil Foden can play there if you need him to. You could argue play Marcus Rashford on the right if you wanted to. There are options. Yes, Saka is probably the most natural starting option there. Jarrod Bowen alongside him in the next slot, behind him in that right wing slot. But it's just incredibly unnecessary. If it's a call up and then he's pulled out of it, I have no issues with that at all. But it's just, if it's the idea, what frustrated me most was the reasoning that Southgate gave when he was asked in the press conference. It was that we have a game in like 5 days, and then it's 7 or 8 days until the Italy game. And he's talking about kind of a single-digit days until the next game. He needs 2 weeks off. Just give the guy 2 weeks off. It's within both of Arsenal and England's benefit to give a guy that has been playing football non-stop. And to those people that say that Saka should be the one to turn around and say no, that's a ridiculous view. It's ridiculous to suggest that Saka has to be the one to turn around. He's been called up to his country. I had someone tweet me yesterday suggesting that it's equivalent to like being ill and going into work still when you're ill and then turning around and saying, look, I can't go in because I'm ill and going in would be unfair on my body. It's not the same. Me going into work and being called up to represent my country cannot be seen as two equal standing things. It's very different. And when you're called up to your country, you are compelled to go. And so for me, it is down to the club and to the FA to come to an agreement over the usage. There is another international break next month in November. There is one more international break this year. There is another one in March as well. We've had one in September. There's one every single month for these 3 months. You can leave Saka out of one of them. You know, if he's included in this one, I pray that he is not included in the next one, because it just doesn't make any sense to allow this to happen. So again, to kind of, in summary, before I do go off too wildly, and I reckon we'll probably cover this ground again in part 2, it's mad he's been called up. He should be given a rest. To accuse Saka of being the one that should be, you know, the guy turning around and saying no, for me is ridiculous, because you know, it's the England national team. You're getting called up to it. You're compelled to go. If you start saying no, it puts you in a very difficult position in future situations. If your club's doing it on your behalf, very different situation. There's so much football going on. You know what you get from Saka. I tell you what, if he's called up and stays in the group and is called onto the field for that friendly against Australia, I'll lose my mind. But it's not just that. It's like, he'll be in training. He'll be doing training matches. He'll be, you know, he could be just back at London Colney, going through a bit of a recovery and rest and recuperation period that they've set out maybe a specific plan for. It could be a really beneficial 2 weeks for him to come back fit and ready for the rest of the year. And that includes the next international break in November, and then all the way around to the Euros next year. Manage his fitness. It's to everybody's interest to do that. It is what it is. This is what it is. Anyway, moving away from England and to move to our headline story. Arsenal are interested in Pedro Neto and are very intrigued about the player's profile and have been for quite some time. And there are very real suggestions that Arsenal could, in January, make a move for the Portuguese international. He started off this season very well. He's got 5 goal contributions in 7 games, 1 goal, 4 assists. All of those are Premier League fixtures, by the way. He obviously forced that own goal against Manchester City with a brilliant run and strike into Ruben Diaz. He's been really important to Wolves' kind of recuperation at the beginning of the campaign. There were worries that Wolves would be maybe in a little bit of trouble, but he's been really key in getting them up and out of that relegation zone. They're now into 15th place in the league after that win over Man City. Massive, massive victory. He's quick, he's speedy, he's left-footed, he's versatile, and we just need a profile like Neto. People turn around to me and say, well, what about his injury record? And to that I say, it doesn't matter if a player's got an injury record anymore, whether they are and have got a most pristine, clean bill of health. They will arrive at Arsenal and ultimately get injured. So I'm almost looking at injuries a bit of a non-factor at this stage, because it doesn't matter if a player has injury issues. They find themselves on the injury table at Arsenal. Declan Rice, one of the most reliable players on the planet in terms of injuries, find himself coming off injured in a North London derby. Thomas Partey, never injured before arriving at Arsenal, injured. It's just ridiculous. So the point into kind of like, if injury records are now a reason to not sign somebody, it's like, what's the point? We know that they're going to get injured anyway. So, so we might as well just appreciate them for the footballers that they are. As long as there's nothing kind of really ridiculous. And I know that he's had a long-term injury last season, but players do recover from these injuries as well. And then the other argument against Neto is that, well, Wolves have just signed into a brand new deal, and that only happened last year. Isn't he going to cost a lot of money? And to that I say, who is not going to cost a lot of money for Arsenal? If you want a Premier League player that's starting the majority of a team's games in the division, they're going to cost a lot of money. That's just the way that it goes, And I think some players are worth investment. And at 23 years of age, he's an incredibly it's a great stage of his career as well to invest in. And I've gone back and forth over the last kind of 24 months with Neto, but I think it would be a good move in the end. I think it would add a lot to us and a lot to Arsenal, a lot of speed, a lot of pace. Finally, a winger that's left-footed that can add depth and competition to Saka's side as well. It'd be great to see it happen. And I, for one, hope that it does. Right, let's move to part 2 then, and your questions right after this. Okay. Darren says Neto and Yusuf Fofana would be a dream for a January transfer window, and I do tend to agree. I think it would be an absolute dream for Arsenal to sign both of those players in January. But do you know what would be an absolute brilliant signing to make immediately for you and your lives and your internet security and safety online? That's right. It's NordVPN. Thank you, Darren, for setting me up so perfectly for that. Because NordVPN will bring you the safety and security that you need online and the superpower to change your geolocation, to be able to change your laptop, your tablet, your phone, anything like that you want to be able to change where it thinks that it is in this big wide world can be achieved through NordVPN. I used it in France. It was amazing. I was able to watch all of the highlights of all the Champions League games because I set myself back in England. My phone thought it was on. My phone must have thought it was going mad. 1 minute it's in France, now it's in England, now it's watching the Champions League because it can't for some reason when it's in France. But yeah, I used it and it was perfect. And you want to invest in these types of things. You want to invest in these types of services that bring you the best opportunity to use the powers that be. Not only does it give you that safety and security and the ability to change geolocation, but you've got things like ad blockers, pesky ads that get in the way of seeing things. You want to use VPNs for that. Exclusive deal, extra months. You've got a 2-year plan, you get a discount off and extra months as well. So go to the link in the description. NordVPN.com/Gooner is where you need to go to get that deal. But I recommend it very highly. Please do get involved. Right, let's jump into the chat box then and tackle some of these questions, shall we? Let's go to Valeria says, are the fan base overreacting a little bit on especially after the Lens game? And are you getting frustrated with Havertz yet? Valeria, I'm not frustrated with Havertz. I'm concerned. Frustration, I think, will come later. I know some fans are very concerned about Havertz. Very frustrated with Havertz. I'm more concerned. The reason for my concern is that we invested a lot of money, and I just worry that maybe that money could have been better spent. That's my concern that I have right now. And could we be getting more from a player that we'd invested £65 million in? That's my concern. I'm willing to continue to give it time. I've told you I've got a 2-season rule, but the first season is really important still. I'm willing to give it that opportunity, but for a player that's starting, it's not like Vieira where he was coming off the bench and having to get opportunities. He's getting plenty of chances to start games. I have to see him wait and see if he starts on Sunday. I want to see more. In terms of the overreaction of the Lens game, they played well, Lens. They defended well. They took their chances. I don't think there's necessarily an overreaction. I think that I felt as though we made mistakes there. I think we make mistakes in the lineup, the substitutions arguably as well. So I don't think there's necessarily an overreaction unless it's kind of like abusive, because that's always an overreaction. But yeah, let's wait and see. Daniel says, I still don't believe that we have played particularly well in any game this season apart from PSV. Do you agree? Like this is comparison to last season and our high expectations. I think Bournemouth, we played well. I think against Manchester United, we were it was a weird game because obviously they only came to do one thing, which was to sit and hit us on the counter, which is a very difficult way, especially when you're going up your team as good as the players that they have. I think, Daniel, that Man United, in the way in which we handled that game in the end, yes, we had to get a little bit fortunate, sure. But I did like the way in which we approached it. Nottingham Forest, we blew away in the first kind of hour, and then we just let them back in towards the end. And that was a really annoying part of that fixture. I think that Everton, we played well. We came away with a 1-0 victory in that game, but we never gave Everton a sniff whatsoever in that fixture. And that's been a really difficult game for Arsenal historically as well. So I think we have played well in games this season. But I think that we haven't necessarily reached our peak, and that's fine because you don't want to necessarily reach a peak too soon. I hope that we continue to build and improve, and we're still unbeaten in the league and in the cup, other than, of course, the Champions League. So there is something to be said about our record in the Premier League. There is something to be said about going into this game. We've got momentum from that 4-0 win against Bournemouth that was a little bit maybe stunted in the Champions League. But I hope that we can go into the game with Man City with the ambition to try and win that fixture. I had it confirmed that I'm going to be going to the game now because we all know that when I don't go to games, the best things in the world don't happen. The games I've not been to this season are Fulham and Spurs. They're the games I've not been to. And what happened in those games? We drew. So just be thankful that I'm going to the game on Sunday because the record hopefully will be fine because I will indeed be there. Dakarai says 1-8, drawn 2, lost 1 in all comps this season. One more goal conceded than City and one or two scored less. If we are poor at the moment and getting these results, surely we should still be in a good place. And this is really a fair point. I loved Rory's Rory Talks Ball. I think that's what it is. But Rory, who's been on the channel, did a fantastically sarcastic little short for his YouTube and TikTok. I thought was brilliant. It's like, yeah, Arsenal have only won, 6 games and they've only, whatever, is drawn 2 of them. And yeah, we've not lost yet, but, it's just not good enough. It's a really good video. If you haven't watched it, go check out Rory on Twitter. But yeah, I think that we are still in a very good place and we're moving in a really positive direction. Ode Guan Kenobi says, when are the football powers that be finally going to realise that the fixture list for clubs and countries is getting out of hand? FIFA, UEFA and the Premier League need to protect these players. What would you do? Well, I wouldn't expand the Champions League for one, and I wouldn't expand the FIFA Club World Cup for another. And I would get rid of the two-legged League Cup semi-final. I'd be tempted to get rid of the League Cup altogether, to be honest. It's kind of mad, isn't it? It is absolutely crazy. When you have suggestions that a World Cup should be played every 2 years, it starts to get even worse. I think I'd break up the international tournaments to every 3 years. Maybe even do that. We say it's every 2 years right now. I know people love international football and international tournaments, but I almost feel like we need to split them up into every 3 years rather than every 2 years now, these international tournaments, for the benefit of players' fitness and health. Maybe you would expand squad sizes. I'd say rather than having 25 in the squad, you can have 30 squad members so that you can have more players and allow more rest. But then you have a lot of players not playing football, I guess, in certain teams. So there's always kind of an opposite view, I guess, and a downside to certain strategies, but it's very difficult. The 5-sub rule, I think, has helped. I think being able to make 5 changes during games is important. The concussion rule is obviously a good thing that's come in as well. But it just seems every good thing that happens, there's like 2 bad things. And that's really annoying. Jabu says, hey, Tom, I watched the preview show for the City game. I noticed that not one person picked Eddie as the striker. In your opinion, is Havertz better than Eddie, or is it just for this game? I think it's specifically for this game. I think Havertz has got a good, the history he's got against City, the Champions League game. I think he played well there in the Community Shield. And I just think that Eddie Nketiah suits games where, you're going to be getting a lot of balls into the 6-yard box. And I think that having a player that you can kind of kick the ball up to as a bit of a target man against City is important. And having both Jesus and Havertz up top, I think will really give you kind of a bit of an outlet for those rare long balls that we're going to be playing in behind that you would imagine. So, and with Rodri not there, I think we've got a great chance to really combat that middle third. If Partey starts, you've got Partey, Rice and Havertz and Jesus as big targets to aim for. Jesus is a big target, but he's certainly a really good player to target with long balls because he's so good at winning them typically. So, yeah, I think that I would go with Havertz because of that style of play that we may look to bypass the City team as much as we feasibly can. James says, Tom, have you fully recovered now from Lasagna Gate? Yes, I think the answer is yes. I would say I am fully recovered. I thought I'd recovered when I left for France, and I quickly realised that I hadn't. I came home and didn't feel great, and that was on Wednesday. But yesterday I was fine, and this morning I feel good, and I'm ready for my cooked breakfast this morning. Cooked breakfast being toast and eggs and probably some avocado as well, because I'm still on this improved diet of mine that is doing wonders. It was not the culprit for this food poisoning, trust me. But it's all good. It's all good. CJ says Mikel has created a lot of unnecessary problems for himself this season. Keeper and Havertz will be running the running plot, and I can't disagree. He's taken risks as Arteta with some of the decisions he's made in the market, and the club overall has taken some risks. I will continue to point back to Jurrien Timber's injury as being a massive blow and a real thing that I will reference as kind of a bit of balance, because that signing was a brilliant piece of business, and sadly we're not going to get the benefit from it. I have seen the links with of course his brother Timber as well, who I think is a midfielder rather than a fullback, Quentin Timber. He is indeed a midfielder. He's 22, and I don't. Are they twins, Quentin and Jurrien? Because I know that obviously family have links of looking similar, but they are very strangely very similar looking. Timber and Timber. So if they are twins, they are twins. Thank you, Ponaru. It is staggering how similar they do look. I think it'd be great to sign that. You think about the Bender brothers, Sven Bender, and what's the other guy called? You guys are going to be screaming it down your phones in the chat box. Someone help me out. It was Sven Bender and I can't remember the other one. But for Bayer Leverkusen when they played, one used to play for, was it Wolfsburg? One played at, and then he moved. Lars, thank you, Lars Bender. Yes, I think it'd be great. It'd be great to have the Timber twins at Arsenal. I'd be really in favour of that. Plus, it's not just because of the what's the word? Can't think of the word now. The dynamic of just having them both. He is really good, and he's being linked very heavily. He's doing really, really well for Feyenoord. 3 assists, 1 goal in 7 games in the league for Feyenoord this season. He wasn't at Ajax. He is at Feyenoord. But really, really interesting play. He joined Utrecht from Ajax in 2021 and left Utrecht for Feyenoord in 2022 for around £6 million. So and he's gone from strength to strength playing for Feyenoord. So very interesting indeed to see if Arsenal's apparent interest. I've seen some suggestions Arsenal might be interested, but to see if they could link them both up at Arsenal, that'd be really exciting, I think. So that'd be fantastic. Let's go to DJ Rudy says, morning, Tom. Listen to you while on another quick holiday in Turkey. Hope you have a fantastic time, Rudy. Dwayne says, will be good. Means if one picks up a yellow, then at half time they can swap depending on who has it. But they're not the same player. So I guess there are differences in their style, which would prevent that. Jimbo says his brother was there with Jurrien when he signed the contract. Oh, yeah, he was. I do remember seeing that. And Phil says we should be looking at signing Jobe Bellingham. He has been doing very well at Sunderland, and he's been very good in the Championship this season. I think he'll be getting plenty of interest from Premier League clubs soon. But yeah, Jobe Bellingham's been doing very well in the Championship this season. Maximir says, I remember that we were in for Sven Bender during the Wenger era as well. Yeah, they could play both defensive midfield and centre half, the pair of them. So I do remember them very, very well indeed. Ollie says, Tom, can you ask Arteta why his eyes are so far back? Does he shove them in with his thumbs? What? That's ridiculous. I think he's just got that kind of like arching, kind of like the lip over the top of his eyes is very Captain Scarlet is obviously the comparison we get a lot with Arteta, but very strange. I think he's very sharp, very good looking man is Arteta, very scary looking. But he did look good in that. What was the interview he did in the fashion magazine? He looked very suave and always does look very suave, does Arteta. Let's go to the De Boer twins, says Cass, played for Ajax, so I wouldn't mind the Timber twins at Arsenal. Mini Rex says, Tom, do you think that Saka will play against City? Probably. Yeah, he probably will play against. He probably will play against City. I think that we know the mind games that go on. And look, it's the biggest game of our season. So yeah, it's very, very difficult indeed to see it not happening. I think he probably will be risked if there's an opportunity for it to happen. Arteta is flawless, says Derek. Yeah, very flawless. That no hair on his head moves out of place. He is exceptionally well kept, is Arteta. Martinelli, do I think Martinelli will play? I think that there is a small chance of him being in the squad, but I'd be surprised if he started the game. CJ Dan says, a lot of people are saying that Mikel could be for us what Rodgers was for Liverpool, a guy that goes close and then Klopp takes us to the next kind of level and has to be found. What are your thoughts? Seems a bit premature to have those thoughts. Yeah, Arteta is very different to Rodgers. I think he's a bit of a lazy comparison just because there's similarities in the sense that he took Liverpool close to a title. I think all that Arteta has done is help progress Arsenal. We've only gone in one direction over him. And, you know, we've got to try and keep continuing to progress. We're not going to know whether we have progressed this season until we get towards the end. And that's just the way that it is. Arsenal Adventure, is there a press conference? Yes, there is. A little press conference a little bit later on today. I'm not working today, so I'm not covering it, but we will discuss that press conference a little bit later on. Derek says, what and where is the Mick Zone? So this is quite a funny running joke, actually. My missus calls it the Mick Zone. Because whenever I say mixed zone, it sounds like the Mick Zone. There isn't anyone called Mick in the Mick Zone, as far as I'm aware. I'm trying to think if anyone is. No. Do we have anyone called Michael? No. And I've not really spoken to anyone called Michael in the Mick Zone either. But the mixed zone, MIXED, is basically the area that I go after the game to speak to some of the players of either team you can speak to. It's very difficult to get a conversation with them because they're not always that keen, especially if they haven't won the game. But sometimes, yeah, Mick Arteta, I guess, but you don't get, the thing is with Mick Arteta is that he doesn't talk in the Mick Zone because he talks in the press conferences. So you can't have Mick Arteta in the Mick Zone because he doesn't talk in the Mick Zone. Unless he's at Everton, because there is the Mick Zone's very close to where he does his managerial interviews. But there's been some great experience in the mix. But my favourite experience in the Mick Zone is probably meeting Arsene Wenger in that Emirates Cup game. It already came because the Mick Zone at Arsenal is like down the lift from the Diamond Club. So anyone coming down from the Diamond Club going to the dressing room has to come down the lift by the big Arsenal. If you've done the Arsenal tour, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. Seeing those doors open and Arsene Wenger stepping out, coming over and speaking to me and some of the other journalists that were there and having a brief conversation with him. Josh Kroenke often walks through there. Edu is very nice. He comes through and talks to people there and says hello every single time he walks through. So yeah, the Mick Zone it's definitely probably the highlight of my daily job, I guess, and going to the games, of course. Phil says, is Arteta the best looking manager in the league? Oh, is he the best looking manager in the league? He's got to be up there. It's got to be up there, surely. I'm trying to think now on the spot if there's any better looking managers. Yeah, maybe. I have to have your suggestions in the chat. Let's go to Ashish says, do you think we should go for Xavi Simons or Pedro Neto? Pedro Neto is more of what we need in terms of a left-footed winger. Xavi Simons is more of an attacking midfielder that can play in a wide area. But I think Neto is more akin to the profile of player that we need. Surely Steve Cooper, says Dan. Leave Steve Cooper alone. He's doing a great job at Nottingham Forest. Minnie says, do you question Arteta's substitutions? Yes, on a regular occasion. On a regular occasion. Neto, Tony and Fofana in January and will be champions, says Iwegbu. Says that. So, I've got my thoughts on Tony. I've made that very clear. But certainly on Neto, I like a lot. And Fofana, I'd love to see Arsenal go for Yusuf Fofana. I think he'd be a fantastic signing for Arsenal. Ray Beam says, my wife loves Pep's looks even more. I can't believe I married the enemy. Pep is like, I think he's acquired taste, you would say, Pep. Used to be like when he was playing for Barcelona back in the day, very model-esque. Is he? He hasn't got the hair to be a silver fox. That's Pep. He's got the silver stubble at times, but not the silver fox look. Dwayne says, Tom, off topic. With Barca now charged for alleged corruption, do you think they're still one of the best? I mean, it depends on the whole kind of about Pep and his involvement, alleged involvement. It's important to point out in this. There's always allegations that need to be proven first before we start saying it is what it is. It's always alleged. And whether or not he was ever privy or involved, for me, he is without a doubt the best manager in the world and has been the best manager in the world for quite some time. There are very few coaches I hold in higher regard than Pep. I don't buy into the argument of that he can't succeed without money. I don't buy into the argument that he can't succeed without an amazing, hyper club. I think he did a brilliant job with Barcelona's youth team, and that got him that job in the first place at Barca. And he helped establish that team, and helped Messi become the player that he is. Helped players improve and reach new levels, like Philipp Lahm at Bayern Munich, and then subsequently Joshua Kimmich as well. He's helped develop some of the best players at Manchester City. And, he's continuing to do that. He's turned Kevin De Bruyne into reaching his potential. He's one of the best man managers in the world at improving individual players and making them world class. So it doesn't change my mind on Pep. And it would need, you'd need to have so much more information to know whether or not if any kind of alleged involvement in anything like that. David says, love the show. Thanks, mate. Today is my birthday and I'm hoping to get to Seville for the game. What is your advice about getting a ticket, only the Seville end, and remaining quiet and anonymous? First of all, happy birthday, David. I hope you have a fantastic day, mate. In terms of advice of going to away games for European matches, I'm pretty useless with that. I've never done that. I've never been to an away European game as a fan. So I'm not the best person to ask. It's all about, points, I think, and going through the club's official lines. I never, ever, ever, ever recommend that you go through ticket touts. If you can go and sit in the home end and you want to do that, Sevilla can be a scary place to sit in. But I saw plenty of Arsenal fans sitting in the Lens home end that were at that game. The Arsenal youth team was sitting in the Lens home end as well. So, yeah, I think that if it's something that you think you can do and sit on your hands, do it. But I wouldn't recommend going and celebrating because Sevilla, very passionate crowd indeed. Matt G says, I'm gutted for Kieran Tierney being injured again. And again, it's just another in a long list of injuries for Kieran Tierney. Very sad situation, but he can't catch a break. And it's one of those reasons, I guess, why Arsenal decided to move on and decided to move him on and stay with the players that we've got that can, play at left back in Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, and Kivior. So there you go. Barry says, how many brothers have played for Arsenal? Great question. Well, Gavin and Justin Hoyt come to mind immediately. I'm trying to think of any others. My knowledge going back, beyond the early 2000s is going to be tough. But maybe some of our more experienced listeners can give some suggestions into the chat box as well. But Gavin and Justin Hoyt come to mind for me. Salah Uddin Umhand and his brother, what's his brother's name in the youth team? Ismail and Ulad. So it's Salah Adil Ulad Umhand and it's Ismail. Is it Ismail Adin Ulad Umhand? But yes, there's two. Dennis and Leslie Compton, says Martin. There you go. Joe Willock and his brother who went to Chris, who went to Benfica. Yeah, great shout. I think Chris is now playing in the lower leagues in England, I'm pretty sure. The Willock brothers were another one. Kolo and Yaya Toure. Yaya Toure did come on trial at Arsenal. Never signed, so I don't know if we can count that one. But there's been a few. We've had a few brothers at Arsenal down the years. Some great opportunities to see that. And was there goalkeepers? Did we have two goalkeepers that were brothers? Abre, maybe there was a Chris is at QPR at the moment. So there you go, really. Thank you for that. Thank you for that information. But there you go. Yeah. And Matt Willock as well. Yeah, there was three of them. You're right, Daniel. Great shout. There was three Willock brothers. There you go. What a nice, fun end to the show. Let us know in the comment section down below if you've come up with any furthers. Yes, Rich Okonkwo. Arthur Okonkwo and his brother, whose first name has escaped me. But you're absolutely right. He has a younger brother who's currently still, I think. No, I think he actually did go on loan. His brother. Quick look. Dum, 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 dum. Come on, Transfermarkt. Don't let me down. It's not coming up for me. In the chat box, you'll definitely... Brian Okonkwo. There you go. He's in the under-21s. So, yeah, Brian Okonkwo and Arthur Okonkwo as well. We had loads of brothers. Turns out it's not so niche at all. Loads of them. Chelsea, remember, you had Torgan Hazard, Eden Hazard, and there was a third Hazard brother as well. Killian. Is it Killian Hazard, I think? So, yeah, there were 3 Hazard brothers as well. Senderos and Ljungberg. Did look very similar, did Senderos and Ljungberg. So there you go. Thank you, everybody in the chat box for joining us. Very appreciate your time, as always. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Do make sure that you drop a like. It really is appreciated. Leave your comments on anything that we've discussed today. What do you think about Bukayo Saka being called up? What do you think about Ben White not being called up? What do you think about this weekend's game? And our links to, of course, Pedro Neto as well. Is he somebody that you would like to see join the club? But thank you, everybody. Oh, yes, the famous brothers of Patrick and Fabio Vieira. Can't forget those guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Really appreciate your time. And as always, up the Arsenal.